for my final oral presentation, I'm basing mine off the movie The Hate U Give. So on the sides there are two pictures. One says Thug Life, The Hate U Give, Little Infant Fucks Everybody. Another side says it's dope to be black until it's hard to be black. So this is an overview on the movie The Hate U Give. It was first published as a book by Angie Thomas, which was published in 2017, and then made into a movie in 2018. It follows the story of Star, played by Manley Sternberg, figuring out the balance between living in a predominantly black area and going to school in a predominantly white area. So Stars is from Garden Heights and went to school called Williamson Prep. Williamson Prep is in a really rich upper class white area, and Garden Heights is in a really poor area, which is ran by a lot of people of color, majority black people. Star witnessed the shooting of her childhood friend Khalil, played by Anthony Smith, and he was shot by the cops. He wasn't armed. During a traffic stop, he was asked to come out of his car, and then he did not listen to the police orders to stay, put his hands on the car. He decided to reach his hand and for a hairbrush, and the cops thought it was a gun, and the cop made a really snap judgment and decided to shoot him. Khalil was written off as a drug dealer and a thug, though he was a drug dealer. Just to preface that, he was dealing drugs for money for his grandmother's cancer treatment because she did raise him his entire life. Star pretty much was told not to speak up at all by the gang, people in the gang, and also by the media, because the media saw the cop as like a hero for killing off someone who dealt drugs, and the gang leaders didn't want what they were doing out to the whole world, that they were dealing drugs, and they had a high schooler doing drugs for them. Star's entire point of this movie was her finding the voice that she was pretty much not supposed to use as a way to open her mouth and speak on injustice that was happening right in front of her face, because she went on TV and didn't show her face, and they muffled her voice so they wouldn't know who it was, yet they still knew that it was the drug. They still knew it was her.
Who's that?
And to keep her, they did everything to keep her identity hidden, but everyone knew it was her, specifically in Garden Heights, but her friends went to her school, Williamson Prep, didn't know it was her. And this entire movie is based on the themes of justice and racism. I mean, like, there's injustice and racism and injustice. I mean, the whole point is that black people were, the whole injustice factor of it all was that a black child was killed, and they were writing him off as someone evil, and the whole racism aspect really tarnished it all, because they were like, well, he's black, he's a drug dealer, therefore he's a bad person. I picked this quote. It's not the hate you give, it's the hate we give. And I think that Star did say, I think it says a lot about this movie. It's not about what or how people perceive us. There's a lot of internal hate within the black community. Yes, they're getting hate from the people who are making laws, but also there's hate within the community, because the fact of the matter is that people in the community were kind of the reason why Khalil was shot and written off as a drug dealer, because the people in her community who were drug dealers were giving the drugs to sell. Though it was for good intent, it was still illegal. And Star's whole point of saying is that there is so much hate that we give to each other, we can't even combat the hate that we're getting from other people. I'm going to be talking about the racism aspect of The Hate U Give. So, inherently, this book is based on the racism that is happening around her. The racism within her school, the racism around that, like, she saw when her friend was shot and killed by the police. So, one of the quotes from my article was, Star used her own voice while also using her voice to utter matter of racial justice in America. Her voice was her way of combating racism that's happening in America. I mean, if she's speaking her truth based on what she saw, I mean, if she never spoke up, then we've never seen how she changed the perspective of Khalil's murder. Started to change her whole personality wherever she went. She was in school, she wouldn't seem too black, and when she was home, she wouldn't seem too white. I mean, Star was caught right in the middle of it all. Like, she lives in a black area, went to school in a white area. So she couldn't act too black in fear of being called a thug or ghetto at school. And she couldn't act too white when she was home in fear of being called white, while her friends not respecting her blackness anymore. I mean, no matter where she went, she was just changing up who she was. And that's code switching. She had to switch up who she's as a person so people wouldn't write her off as something she's not. I mean, Khalil was called a thug by the media and law enforcement in a way to justify being shot. I mean, wherever, even in like today's media, anytime like a black person is killed and there's a media outburst, there's always saying, well, he did this and he did that. He's a bad person. He's a thug. He's ghetto. Him being shot by a cop was justified. I mean, and the thing is, Khalil was not a thug. So the media and law enforcement calling him a thug was a way to like underplay his murder. Fallen victims to the horrors of being a person of color in America. I think this is a prime example of like the racial issues in America, because that we don't see everything that happens. I mean, we didn't see most of it that happened when other black people were killed, but it took social media to kind of bring to light everything that is happening. I mean, there have been like written throughout history, black people were seen as people who were less than, and it leads into like the systemic racial dehumanizations that they were fallen victims to horrors. I mean, like they were killed. I mean, mass incarceration has to do with the horrors of being a person of color in America. Slavery, and there's mass incarceration, the war on drugs. I mean, everything written in history, there's always the line that goes, it's always a part that goes unseen because it goes after people of color. Now just because we have to deal with this mess, don't forget your blackness is an honor because you came from greatness. I think this quote speaks so much about how Star's dad tells her, do not be scared of who she is. Do not be scared of your blackness, because your blackness is a power. I mean, because people are black, certain people will take that as a way of like, how do I say this? They kind of see it as a, to say things without feeling any repercussions. And that has been throughout history. Black people were kind of the laughingstock of an American communities, that you could say anything to a black person and not even get in trouble. And that was happening for like hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, majority of America's history is based off slavery, and now we're faced with the fact that you should be proud to be black, and this quote saying being black is an honor, don't let it be taken away. There are people who've walked through Star's shoes and seen greatness and come from greatness. And I believe this is probably the best quotes to come out of this movie. Now, justice. I think this book also speaks highly about justice. From Star growing to justice to seeking her voice means she must come to terms with her identity being fragmented. I think her identity was always kind of all over the place. She didn't really know where she stood in life, and she never really found that balance. And I think her seeking justice is a way that her identity became so powerful. Star's voice was a sign of power, and she used she used her power of her voice to fight for justice. The whole premise of the book was her finding justice, and her voice was how she fought for justice for Khalil. I mean, without her voice, there would be no justice for Khalil. The fist vigorous four spiritual interactions embodying the claims that is contested in cultural and physical terms, on which memory of racial justice and hope for democratic citizenship were written. But it's not just a fist, it's a fist. It's in Star's fist. She will eventually speak her truth. I mean, throughout history, the fist, holding your fist up is a very powerful thing. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. did it through the Civil Rights Movement. I'm sure it was used before in like other fights for racial equality. Holding your fist up is not just something taken lightly. And I think Star, when she rose her fist up at this protest in the movie that did turn violent, it was her like saying, I'm here, see me, because I see this, I want you to see me for who I am. And also I feel like without Star speaking her truth, I have to say it again to reiterate it, it was a way for for her to get justice for Khalil, because the officer, he was just, they didn't he wasn't tried or anything. This movie is about the striking cycle of violence back in the racist American roots. To say the least, the ground of America is built off of slaves. From 1619 till now, it was built off the backs of Black people and people of color. To say that America is not a racist country is a little disheartening, because no matter where you are in history, there is something bad happening to Black people. I mean, you could even say in like rehabilitation, when Black people were seen as kind of humans, they weren't always treated that way. Even there were laws saying you can't do this, you can't do that, people will still go out of their way to make Black people feel less than. And it is biases. I mean, it's all biases that we saw, that we lived through. I mean, like, though we can't legally act on them, you can still personally act on them. I mean, even the simple things. If Black people want to do good in America, it was burnt down like Tulsa, Oklahoma, burned down Black Wall Street. Though in New York, Black people built Wall Street themselves. I mean, the economy was built off of slaves, free labor. And I think this movie kind of just goes through like the cycles of it all, like how her friends didn't really see her for who she is. Her white friends didn't see Star for who she is. Is that the same as white people didn't see Black people as who they are? She defies the pressures and coming from her family from the streets, deciding that her sole purpose is to speak up and earn justice for Khalil deserves. I think this speaks a lot. I mean, she has pressure from her family to speak up, pressure from the streets to not speak up, pressure from her friends who are just confused on what to do, not speak up. No matter where Star looked, people telling her, do this, don't do that, do this, but something bad could happen. I mean, when her family was having dinner after she went on television, the gang members came up to her family in a restaurant and almost attacked her. And then in school, they're having a protest and walking out for Khalil, but they don't know why they're walking out. So Star is caught in like these two worlds, and people were just kind of feeding her different sides, and she doesn't know what to do until her dad says, use your voice, be your voice. For my video, I used the Hate You Give official trailer. This is the movie trailer, and it just kind of gives like a sneak peek of what happens in the movie.